Guys, welcome back to another episode of the League Crawler Podcast. I am your host, Moestradamis. You can call me Mo. I thank you for being here. If you guys haven't had a chance to go back and check out some of what we've done before, I highly encourage you to do this. This is going to be our 6th episode. Week 1, we had Matt, the guy who owns League Crawler. I'm a guy that I love partnering with. He allows me to come in and do these shows, get to know different people. Get in there, check out what Matt had to say. Week 2, we had Nate from OMFL. Week 3, we had Curtis from Sports Gaming Online. Week 4, we had an awesome conversation with Shopmaster, one of the OGs of the Madden community. Week 5, we had Rick from Dad Bods. And this week, we have Brian. And I want to make sure I say this right, Brian, from the Super Casual Sim Football League with Access Football. Did I get that right?
It's actually Football Sim League. You flip the F and the S. But don't worry, you're not the first and you won't be the last to do that.
Gotcha. I'm changing that right now. So getting into a little bit of news, guys, because you know how we do this. We start with our news program. If you haven't already done so, if you are somebody that you're like, yo, I like Madden, but I also really like first-person shooters. I like getting in here. I like playing some Call of Duty. Whatever the shooters are out nowadays, League Crawler is going to have that. We are continuing to grow. We're continuing to put in new things, new games. I know a lot of people associate League Crawler with Madden, but today we hope to kind of break that mold a little bit and show you guys that we are getting into a little bit more than what EA has to offer. So if you're into some of those shooters, go in and check some of that stuff out. And they're looking for other games too. If you guys have ideas, I know that when we had Nate on from OMFL, he talked a lot about some of the other stuff they did, the WWE games, the UFC fighting games, the NBA, the MLB. I know that's coming out soon. So if you guys have other things that you would like to see League Crawler kind of add in, if you have some of those, reach out to Matt, let him know what you'd like to see, and we'll work at getting some of that stuff in. Getting into some league news from around the community, there were a lot of Super Bowls that kind of just happened recently, and there was an influx. I know that we had one, Soden Bowl had one, MSR had one, AGS had one. I mean, there was many, many more. And I want to make sure that we're collecting some of that. Like, I want to know who you guys' winners are. I know that we talk about a lot of leagues, but I'd like to start talking about a lot of users. I'd like to know who's in the community. What guys should we be watching out for? Those kind of things. But congratulations to all the Super Bowl winners out there recently. Intrepid 2K right now, guys, is recruiting for their PS5 group. They are an NBA 2K team. I don't think they're a league. From my understanding, they are a team. So if you're looking to be like, hey, I think I can add something to a group of guys, get in there, check them out. I know they're doing some invites, they're recruiting. Go in there, see what they're all about. The SPA community, the community that I'm involved, we are doing movie nights now once a week. We have some young guys that have never seen some movies like Die Hard, Bloodsport, so some of those movies. So we're going to be going in some of the old guy movies and coming up with some new things for some of these guys to watch and then kind of shoot them off into manhood. So that's kind of what's going on around the community. We need to get into our first sponsor, guys. If you haven't done so, if you are a business owner or you are somebody that's promoting your work or your site or your league or whatever the case may be, it's something that you want to put out there, head over to SpaceTradr.com. Space Trader is a brand new service designed to help like-minded business owners connect to each other. Go to the site, browse for opportunities to cross-promote, trade advertisements, share referrals with others in the community, post your own ads for others to find. As a community, we can find, connect, and grow at SpaceTradr.com. The link is going to be in the description below. Brian, that leads us to you and the really cool things that I've been kind of watching over the last few days with what you guys have going on with Access Football. Okay. Now, for those of you that don't know, a lot of you are going to be like, Access, what is it? Can you explain to our listeners what this game is?
Sure. So similar to Madden, it's a football game. The couple of things to it, it's made by, I think, 3 people. Realistically, it's one dev. There's a UI guy, a UX guy. There's a couple of things, but they're all sort of working on it. It's an indie football game. It's a little bit different from Madden. It's sort of, we've actually had the pleasure of sort of seeing it grow as a product in the span of a year and really develop and grow into actually a really strong football game. It doesn't have the high-end graphics of Madden, but it definitely has a deep franchise mode. It has a couple of other things that I really love to it.
Like I guess when I was watching it earlier, because you're right, the graphics are the thing that stick out. It's not going to be what everyone looks at and be like, oh my God, Madden's got this new competitor. It's not those kind of graphics. it reminded me a lot of what we used to see with like Madden 98 or some like those other games. It looks like the concepts play really well, though. What are the areas that these guys are trying to hit? Like when they have their vision, what is their lane?
Sure. So obviously, I can't speak for them because I don't know their grand vision. But let me see sort of what I can explain. I know that one of the things that they've poured a lot into both this past season and for when they were actually developing 2019 was making a really deep and diverse franchise mode. I know. I think it was Shop who said the franchise mode is not something to invest in for Madden. Well, the franchise mode here is actually something that is very in depth. So it has sort of to basically explain it, they've built it on a 3-tier system. One of which is it's basically like promotion relegation, similar to how you have soccer in Europe. But the other thing about it is like it's got finances that you have to spend. So you can spend on facilities, you can spend it on scouts. You have scouts, you have positional coaches, and you can develop, grow in, change them out, and sort of play to their strengths. So it's got a really, really deep franchise mode with I think 36 teams.
Now, one of the things that I saw in your guys' stuff earlier, and correct me if I'm wrong, was it didn't look like someone was actually playing the game. Are they calling plays?
Correct. So, yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there.
Go.
I got really excited. So I know something that you said on some of your other streams was sort of what defines a sim league, because sim has been something that you've been struggling to define. You wanted to define your league as a sim league. I think we take our sim league to a whole new level, which is we're completely an AI versus AI game. So I think you were actually there for our first game of the playoffs tonight with the Flamingos and the Aztecs. And as you saw, we went to a player versus AI, and then we switched it over to a full spectate. So it is an AI versus AI. And what happens is that actually people come in and they'll create a player and grow and develop them over the course of the season. They'll get thrown into the system, and then the AI sort of just goes. So it's fully sim. GMs are responsible for managing their players and sort of helping, keeping them, signing them, getting them onto contracts, drafting them, all of that. But it's not so much it's not the GMs making the calls of the plays. They can set up the playbooks. They can set up the weight of the pass and the run sliders within there.
Okay, so take me from the very beginning. Like, let's say that I'm somebody, I'm like, yo, I want to get into super casual football sim league going into the next game that comes out, which I'm assuming is the next year, but with 3 guys, maybe it's not the next year. When is the next game coming out for access?
So I think they are starting to work on 2021. Yes. So
okay, so yeah, 2021. Now I'm somebody that's like, yo, I'm over the EA Madden conglomerate. I don't want to deal with this. I don't necessarily know what I want. How would you guys sell this to me? Like, how would you attract in a viewer that only knows Madden and only knows connected franchise?
Sure. So I'm actually really glad you brought that up, because one of the things that we've had is because we are sort of the largest access football league out there, we've had people just pop in and go, "Tell me more about this engine." And so we have to do an elevator pitch, even though with it at the drop of a hat. So to basically explain sort of what it is that I really love about it is it's a couple of things. One, it's got a really in-depth franchise mode, which I said. But the other things that I love is sort of the customization that it allows you to do is essentially your imagination. So all the teams that you saw today, those are all custom built from the ground up. The logos, everything like that.
Which was really cool. The Flamingos, I was really rooting hard for them the entire way.
Oh, they're a great team. I actually built them before I built the league because that was just the branding I loved.
Nice.
But yeah, so it's one of the things that makes it so good is it's the sky's the limit. With everyone sort of coming in and creating their own player, it's on a roster.csv file. So if someone needs to go and update it, they can grow and develop, and it's right there. We can edit and modify all of the settings for the players and the teams right then and there on the spot. So
now, do the players have like an overall similar to what Madden does? How relative are the games together? Because they didn't really seem like very similar at all.
So, like, you mean, so I'm not sure I quite understand the question. Like, are you talking like an overall rating, like a player's 99 and 80 or something like that?
So, like, you see, like some of the guys in Madden as they develop your in Madden, you like certain every week you can put in 2 guys or 2 positions to develop. You know what I mean? So some weeks it's linebackers and cornerbacks, and some weeks it's defensive line and linebackers. So the way that they kind of grow throughout the year is very group related. I would say. What are the differences when it comes to those franchise?
So I can't speak. I know Axis has something in the franchise, but I can't speak to that as well as I'd like. What I can do is speak to it sort of within the context of our league.
Yeah, with you guys,
Okay.
with what you guys
So yeah,
are.
so I want to actually start at the beginning. Let's start with the journey. Sort of, you decide you want to join our league. So you'll create a
Right.
player right then and there.
Okay.
That player will get thrown into either our development league, or if the case is right now, they'll get thrown right into the draft, which is coming up in about a week and a half. They'll get drafted to a team. They're going to sign a contract. That contract is going to give what we call in the sim community world TPE, or training points earned. And that contract is basically going to allocate how much you can spend to develop and grow your player, and you'll get paid that contract at the end of every game. So within that context, and I have to say our league is held together by a slew of Google Sheets that are each feeding into each other. So within that context, you're going to grow, you're going to develop that player, you're going to spend those points on your player, and then every Sunday they will be updated and then fed into the system.
Okay, so each user then only gets one player, not a team?
Correct. So we have over 500 players that are created and currently playing right now.
Okay, so and then got you. Okay, my player do I get to pick like where he gets to play, or how much he signs for, or
yes.
like how much?
Yeah. So one of the things, and this was kind of the point about the sim earlier, is if you think about it within the Madden context of your league, if I'm maybe so bold as to make an assumption, you don't really have to worry about the players' morale on your team that you've signed.
No.
Right. So within this context, there is that aspect here, because each player is their own player. You have your own needs, wants, contract, and all of that. Some players want a big deal. They want to sign for as much TPE as humanly possible and fight regression that comes on really quickly so that they can make it into the Hall of Fame. Some players want that ring. They're going to play for some of the better teams for as cheap as humanly possible just to get that ring and say that they've won a championship. Mm-hmm. So everyone's sort of got their own path and direction in which they go.
This is super mind-blowing to me. So I don't mean to pause because it was kind of taking it off.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to join into Super Casual's Football Sim League, I would create my own player. We would figure, how would I determine like what position I do? I just get as creative as I want. I could be like, I want to be a quarterback.
So I would recommend. There's two aspects to that. Let's talk about a quarterback, and let's talk about anyone but a quarterback, because would you believe quarterbacks are a position that is log jammed and everyone wants to be one?
Right.
So if you want to be a quarterback, what'll happen is it'll be one of three things. You'll either get signed to a team, and then they'll say, look, this is great, but we don't have a spot for you yet, but we want you down the line. So we're going to send you back down to our development league, where you'll play against opponents that are also probably being sent down as well as new creates. And you're going to grow and develop there. And then when the time comes when that player retires or leaves in free agency, we're going to bring you up.
And how many seasons do you guys typically go? Like, how many years can my guy go?
So this is where it gets really interesting, because one of the big challenges that I've seen in other sim leagues that use a model where there is no real growth of point tasks, regression isn't really a factor. And to me, that doesn't work, because someone who joins early is going to be unstoppable. So what we have is basically at the end of your fourth season, regression begins. And as we all like to joke, the first 2 seasons of regression don't really count. But you're going to lose a percentage of the points that you've earned to basically get back to 0. So you're going to, let's say you have 100 points, and at the first year you lose 10%. You're going to lose 10 TPE to spend, and you're only going to have 90, so you have to remove 10 from your player's attributes, and then you're good to go.
Now, is there a place that you guys have online for anybody wanting to kind of like see this written down in a different model that they can kind of go check this out?
So I think you cut off there at the first part of that question. Could you repeat that once more?
Yeah. So do you guys have a website or anything that guys can go check out if they have any questions or want to see this written down? And
so we have a rule book, actually. It's on a Google document. We don't have a website yet. One of the things that we kind of felt granted, when I first started this, I did not expect it to sort of take off, make it a year, have over 500 people created. So that was kind of just not really expecting it. But it is a free league, so we felt that a website was going to be very arduous to have that. But we do have everything from our rules and sort of how it's all laid out, written down in a guide right there on our Discord channel.
Okay. Now, then from what I understand, then I don't even have to have the game in order to partake in a league like
Correct.
this. Right. Okay. So for anybody out there that would like to dive into this, what is the best way for them to get in contact with you to be a part
Sure.
of
So
this?
we have a Discord. I'm definitely happy to send that along to you. Um,
Yeah.
and realistically, you join. We have a group of rookie mentors as well as our own head office and general managers as well who run the teams to reach out to you and help you along the way. We have a channel actually in our Discord that we call Rookie Questions Judgment Free, solely for that
Mm-hmm.
purpose.
Got you. Okay, so guys, the link for what they've got is going to be in the description below. I'll make sure I get that from you after this. So it's good to go Friday morning. Okay, so I get my guy, and again, I don't want to repeat this, but I want to go through these steps because I want everyone to have a legit understanding of what's going on. I get my guy. We create the position. We go through, and I get to use the things that I'm sure I can't make him like amazing overall right away. There's got to be like some growth aspect to this. How can I best separate myself from other people and show that my guy deserves the most he can get?
Sure. So there's a couple of things. Generally, what team? So we've built some rules and sort of to help you with that actually. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a few sort of factors. We have first thing called activity checks. This is sort of the lifeblood of our league. We use it to set our budget and everything for all the teams. So that this way they know how much to spend, but it also tells us sort of how active everyone is. An activity check gets you 8 TPE, but it also tells people you're active, you're worth the investment, you're worth spending on. In addition, one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that we discovered in our third season was that rookies that we're creating basically were at this huge disadvantage where they come in and just get completely annihilated because everyone else had 2 seasons of earning on them. So
All
what we
right.
did is we basically said, okay, we know that 15 TPE is the average contract per player. We also know that rookies need a fighting chance to survive. So what we said is that if you're a rookie, you're going to get 50% of your contract right up front for that season. So instead of earning, let's say you get 10 a game, you'll only earn 5 a game, but you'll also get 70 right at the front in a 14-game season.
Got
So
it.
that's
Okay.
part one. And then there's part two, which is the second part of the question of how do you make sure that you get paid? So depending on
Right.
the position, teams tend to also, with that rookie rule in mind, tend to really heavily pay their rookies because they want them to make that instant impact. We're also voting on a rule in our rule summit this off season about possibly giving rookies that are sent down to give the team back 5 TPE in their cap to spend per person they send down,
Okay.
so they can spend more on their rookies.
Got it. Okay. I gotta ask you, man, before we break it off into this too much, right? So Access decides to come out with this
Yep.
football game. How did that idea then go to you going, we're gonna create this entire world of
All
a
right.
league?
So that's a long question, but it's a long answer to a very simple question. So I actually first started with sim leagues back in 2017. I got dragged into a league that has now renamed itself to the ISFL. I've been in a couple of
Mm-hmm.
baseball, hockey one at one point. I think I briefly joined a box ball one. That's interesting and fascinating. There was also a race car one. But what really sort of happened was there was a football league I was brought into from a friend on a baseball league. And the best way to really describe it is uh, there was a bit of a schism, but we said, great, we're going to try this on Madden. We're going to try it on the most recent Madden at the time, which I believe was 2020, but might be 2019. And we realized that there are definitely some shortcomings with Madden within the context of a sim league. I have yet to see a Madden sim league really take off. And the best way to describe it is sort of a story that happened in one of the leagues I was in a while back, where about 2 plays into the game, someone realized that the quarterback was wrong. And what happened is basically the game had to obviously stop because the wrong players were in. And they had to basically reset it, which took another hour. So one of the things that actually really drew me into Axis was we were looking for a new engine. And there were like a couple of them out there. There was Maximum Football, there was Access. Maximum Football didn't work, it wasn't on PC, but I actually reached out to the Access team and I said, how does this work and how are all the teams saved? And 2 things that really resonated with me was first that Danny, the head developer, actually responded to that email. And he sort of took the time to walk me through everything. And the other thing that really sort of stood out to me is he's like, yeah, everything is saved in a roster.csv. So what I'm thinking about, if we go back to that quarterback issue, and we've had moments where I've literally sat down and realized that half of the team is not updated or half of the team is wrong, or it's got the wrong depth chart from the week before, and we need to change it, it's about a 3-second process. It's just going in, editing the cells in Excel, and then calling it a day. And to me, that ease of use helps on a couple of levels. So it helps, one, it helps me sort of fix issues. It helps, two, our update system actually function in a simple and fluid manner. And more importantly, it allows our sim team to grow. It allows general managers to go in and test. We have a sheet that basically has all the most recent depth charts and all the most recent playbooks that teams have assigned. So that general managers can go, all right, we've got a playoff game coming up. I'm going to test. I'm going to develop a playbook that's going to work better against what they last put in. Of course, you don't know what the other GM is doing and what they're putting in until the deadline already passes.
Right. Got you. Okay, this is very interesting to me. All right, so if I'm a player, then the obvious thing that I want to be is the greatest player of all time. I want to go to the Hall of Fame and produce, and then my guy retires, and I can just create another guy, correct? Okay, and how many seasons do you guys typically get through in a cycle?
So what do you mean when you say a cycle?
So like Madden has a game drop out every year. So I would say like that year is the Madden cycle. So from the time that you guys start with one game until the next one when 21 drops, how many seasons do you guys typically get in?
So, okay, gotcha. So it's how many games are we going to get in? So it really depends on a few factors. And so I need to sort of explain when we started and sort of where we're at now, which is one of the things that we've really benefited from is a great partnership with the Axis team. So when we started on 2019, we were basically just flying on our own. And about 2 seasons before 2020 comes out, or 3 seasons, one of their developers at the time, Dave, actually comes in to the chat on Twitch and sort of starts talking with us and starts having all these conversations. We actually get him in the booth for one of our games. But within that context, it's sort of, what is the new engine doing? And it's sort of that sort of question. So within the switch from 2021 or 19 to 20, there were a couple of things that we looked at. One of them actually that stalled us at the very beginning was that the injuries were on and there was no way to turn them off. As long as that, we don't have injuries on in our league, because if you're a player and you create and all of a sudden you're out for the rest of the season because of a concussion, that's going to be a bad experience for you. So we don't have injuries off. So that was a big drawback for us. So we actually waited for that to happen. One of the things, though, that they did put in, which actually pushed us towards the quicker emergence, was the export of the files. So when we first started, we were actually taking screenshots of all of the end of game scores and stats, and then manually typing them into a spreadsheet so we could get them into our database. So the export has helped us a lot.
Yeah, that would be a huge advantage to have. Okay. All right, so I become the greatest of all time. I do that, but then I start to lose interest in being a player, right? How do I go to the next? Is there
there's a few things. Yeah, it's a great question. So we do have GMs. You can be a GM and a player. One of the things, so one does not preclude you from the other. You cannot be a player on one team and a GM for another, because that creates all sorts of conflict of interest. So we actually had 2 GMs that were recently hired this offseason, and I believe one of them is going to just sign himself in free agency, and the other one has to trade for himself. So.
Got it. Oh, so he has to trade for him. What's the guy that he is on his team?
So, generally we haven't had that issue. In the event that one team makes an offer and the other team says this is not a good offer, we want this, and it's going to get to that deadline where we need to have everything set before the kickoff of preseason or before the kickoff of regular season. We generally have a thing called arbitration. We've yet to use it, but in the event that happens, head office is then given the list of the trades, and we have to just pick one. We can't compromise. We can't split. We just say, this is the one we're going with, and that's it. So we do have that fail-safe in place.
Gotcha. Okay. This is incredible, man. What you guys are building there, like there's content. Like, so for what I do, right? So one of my biggest things, I create like an overlay for myself. I adjust my screen kind of like what you guys do in your Twitch, which if you guys have a chance to go check out their Twitch, it's awesome. Check it out. It's a lot of fun, very interactive. But I kind of do like my own stories and content and stuff through there. And my guess is with so many people, you guys are doing very similar things. Can you talk to me about some of the content or some of the storylines you guys are having?
Sure. So actually, when this airs, this will be Friday morning, if I'm not mistaken, correct? So this is actually going to be the day of the Super Casual Bowl. So we have actually 2 great games in our championship night, because that'll be actually airing later tonight, which is you're going to have the Rail Raiders and the Kings are 2 development leagues. They're going to play each other. The Rail Raiders lost 1 game this season and 0 games last season, and the Kings nearly had them at the last time they matched up this season. So there are 2 development teams, but they also played each other last season. In addition, you have the Wallabies and the Aztecs in our Super Casual Bowl number 7. The Wallabies have been this absolute monster of a team. Everyone likes to complain about the Wallabies, but they are the sort of marker for success. They had an undefeated season. They haven't missed the playoffs since they existed as an expansion team, and they've just been absolutely dominant. Meanwhile, the Aztecs lost to them last time, but they also split with the Wallabies. Both teams have a 13-1 record, each team giving the other one their loss. It's just a fascinating story. The Aztecs also haven't seen a Super Casual Bowl since their first season when they were actually under a different name. Meanwhile, the Wallabies have been there just about every season. So there's a ton of stories here.
Yeah, that is awesome, man. The reason I asked about content is it's a great segue into our next sponsor, which is really the only reason that Matt allows me to do this, is because it's kind of like this. And guys, are you looking for a custom league or a personal logo? Are you wanting to grow your brand with things like banners for your site or intro videos for your YouTube or Twitch channels? You're in luck, because our friends over at Shatter Creations with a Z are here to help. Head over to shattercreations.com and tell them that League Crawler sent you for 20% off. The link is going to be in the description below, guys, and check them out. They do really fun work. If you got some cool, I know they're working on some Daddy League stuff right now, so if you got a Daddy League updated, give them a shot. Getting into how many, because you said it's almost like a college, or not college football. It's almost like the soccer setup where you've got different leagues.
So we only have 2. We only have our development, and so that was sort of with the franchise, with the promotion and development. But ours, we only have 2. We have our majors and our minors, essentially. And the minors aren't linked to a major team. There are 3 human teams and 1 bot team. And the reason is just simply because we felt like having more people in the same locker room was a better environment than having a lot of people spread out over 4 teams. So we have 3 human teams and 1 bot in there, and then we have just our major league, which has 10 individual teams there.
Now, I'm going to give you guys a major kudo, because right now I've got about 120 people that are in my chat, and I'm not going to lie. I love these guys. They're my brothers. Like I ride or die with right? But sometimes it can be very overwhelming. You guys have 500 plus people.
So 500 creative players. I think we're about 400 people.
Okay, so 400, which is still an incredible number. So 400 people. How do you guys manage like all these people? How many guys?
So we have actually a big staff. Someone likes to joke, I have more members of my staff than I know that I need, and I always hire more, and I still do most of the work. And I also don't sleep, but that's a different story. But we do have quite a bit of staff. We have a head office team. And then bear in mind, not everyone's chatting at the same time. A lot of those people are there just to really sort of check in with the general community. But they also have their own team Discord locker rooms. So they each have their own. And a lot of people, let's say, I know a bunch of them will not chat generally in general, but will be like talking all the time in their team locker room.
So, okay, so how intense does it even get intense, some of these battles of like, I'm the backup quarterback?
So we haven't had one of those since season 1, which was an absolute wild day. The Omaha Vipers in season 1 decided to draft not 1, not 2, but 3 quarterbacks and then have them compete for the starting quarterback job. Mind you, this is when we are first kicking off. We have no idea how the engine works. A lot of the changes that we've seen in sort of AI behavior that have occurred, some of it because of our league, such as sort of the kicking, that was not really a factor. It used to be that the AI would never go for a kick from more than 40 yards. Now it is dependent upon the kicker power. And that is a big part of because of our league and sort of how we built our kickers. But at the time, none of these players had really great stats. They were at about 55 or 65 in just about every department. So the quarterback battle went with, I think, one of them became quarterback, one of them became a running back, and one of them became a wide receiver. The wide receiver probably retired too early to make it into the Hall of Fame. The running back is a lock for a Hall of Fame. That quarterback is never going to see the Hall of Fame. But we have seen that happen. But generally, we've recognized that that is a problem and sort of there is a logjam. So we built in a rule. We did a lot of testing. Generally, my off seasons are spent sort of testing the engine, trying to fix all the things that we notice, because we're still learning, we're still growing, we're still developing, and we're reporting everything that we find to Access as well. So there is that sort of communication there. But we're noticing things like the DL4 is all of a sudden becoming a sack machine. Why is that? But so we're doing all these tests. But to go back to the point about sort of with the one of the things that we noticed is that I know someone mentioned something about a wide receiver tight end glitch in Madden. That's not really a factor here. The engine itself is position agnostic outside of kicker and punter. It's the only ones where it's fussy on. So if those two aren't listed correctly, but if everything else is listed however the heck you want it, it's going to run just fine and it's not going to break. And it's not going to give any undue advantage. A DL that's named as a LB isn't going to change how it's played. It looks only at the attributes itself.
Got you. Okay. With some of the stuff that you guys have in franchise, because I really wanted to get into franchise mode, what are some of the features that Access has as a part of the franchise mode that you look at and just say, this is incredible.
Yeah, so
anywhere else.
I granted, I haven't delved as much into franchise as much as I'd like, but one of the things that I love is sort of developing the scouting process. You have points you can spend on your scouts, and you can tell your scouts, I want you who's an expert in X to go to this area, or I want you who's an expert in Y to go there. And one of the other things that wowed me about it is you can basically say how strong of a training you want to do for your team as a whole, what you want them to focus on, and then you also want to say, okay, we're going to build our facilities so that they get injured less while training. And yeah, so it runs sort of on a money in, money out model, which I think is fascinating because then you can use it so you can basically build it and build up your team.
Got it. Okay, what Access is doing over there, I'm very intrigued with. I know that, guys, we're going to have a developer for Access on in the next few weeks, so I'm very excited to kind of break this down with them. What are some of the things that when you look at what you guys are doing in your league, what are some things that you are hoping that this next version of Access
there are
is going
three
to
things
allow
that
you
I
to
have on my wish list, and I have to say I love sort of where, again, the Access engine has come from. It's come a long way since 2019. We've seen running. When we first started, runners wouldn't catch in stride. They'd catch it, they'd stop, and then they'd get tackled. We wouldn't see sort of the AI have this clock awareness to be more aggressive in the fourth quarter. We'd sort of just see them kind of lazily about it. We've seen things where penalties were kind of solely driven by yards. So instead of telling them we're going to decline it to its fourth down, it's more yardage, so we're going to give them another chance on third. We've seen passing sliders and custom playbooks come into play, which is definitely amazing. But the three things are all minor that I have, which is one, and I know they're already working on, and they're going to talk about it, I'm sure, is the OL-DL interaction. Right now, as a player who is an offensive lineman, I can tell you that the OL doesn't really get any love. So that's kind of, they're getting beaten by DL, and we're still trying to figure out the why and the how, and whether it's the fact that the rest of the defense is so good or if it's just the DL being broken. So that's part one. There is an aspect that is broken to it. Part two is the screen pass. I don't think when they developed this game, they expected our league to do what we've done. As one of the members of my head office likes to joke, we're their free QA team. And so the screen pass is very broken because what will happen is the running back will have 99 speed because everyone in every single, I think, football engine ever since the dawn of time has always been a speed-based system. And so what will happen is the wide receiver will get the screen at the 99, and they'll already be running out of the sidelines and losing about 7 yards on that play. So it's kind of the one tricky thing there. And then finally, my last thing, and this is me because I am a big stats junkie, which is I want to see sort of the AI, not really the AI. I want to see the stats capture more things for defensive backs and DL. I want to know how many tackles for a loss are happening. I want to know how many times a DB has been targeted. Because one of the big things that we have in Sim League is always a challenge is award voting. So we're in the middle of it right now, and it's really hard to gauge how good a defensive back is when all you have to go off of are deflections and interceptions. Well, sure, they could have deflected and intercepted the most times, but if they were targeted more than anyone else, that tells me more than anything else right then and there.
Very true. Okay, so when you're continuing to build this, right, for what you guys have going on, what do you look at and say, this is our target audience? These are the kind of people that we want to bring
I'll
in.
be honest, compared to, I'm more on the nerdy side. One of my co-hosts and I, we play D&D together every Thursday. It's a great time all around. So generally we target is kind of the people that the league that I joined first when I first started targeted, which is not necessarily your big jocks like who understand all the nuances of football, because I feel like if they go in and they go, I'm going to do this and I'm going to build exactly how I built my way and not really have any love for the RPG aspect of it. Actually, let me go back. Let me actually answer this question a better way, which is in the Madden game, I'm forgetting which, was it 2010 that had Troy Polamalu and and Larry I knew you were a Cardinal fan. I'm like, I'm going to mess this up and I'm going to feel really guilty.
I forget what Madden was, but that was my favorite.
So in that mode, they had this thing where you could create a player. And I remember it well. I created a player. He was terrible. As a Jets fan, I wanted him to play for the Jets. He never did because the Jets were set with Sanchez at the time. Little did I know. But, and this is kind of the big sort of thing to it. It's basically that in an MMO model. So it's those people that are interested in sort of seeing how good they can build and seeing how well they can push themselves to be the best against other people who are trying to do the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. No, that's a great way of putting it, because I don't necessarily see people that are looking at this and being like, I just want to go join this thing because I just want to go play. Like, this is definitely one of those ones where a lot of it's out of your control. And you just have to stay active. So I'm assuming you get more of an adult type of atmosphere. And maybe I'm wrong with that. Maybe you do have just a bunch of young kids running around that don't care what their players are. But I
think it's a mix of both.
Would I be right or wrong?
You definitely do get some younger people, but you definitely do get some older people. I think I'm the third oldest member in my head office. I got two people who are ahead of me. One of them likes to joke I'm his newer version. But it really sort of depends. I mean, we definitely have there's a balance between there. I think you do have some young kids running about, but they also tend to burn out much faster because there isn't really necessarily something, and this is what makes us super casual, is there isn't a point task. There isn't any writing task that needs to be done to earn. It's all about that contract and being active within the community. So
Gotcha.
No, after you.
Now, go ahead. Keep going, Brian. Well, I was going to get into my next part because I have an interesting question for you, but it's completely off the topic. So I want you to finish with.
Okay, sorry. Just grab me a drink of water. I've been talking all night. So within that, we do have definitely some young people running about, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. They're definitely growing. They're definitely still learning. And I think it's a casual enough environment that they don't feel super pressured to feel like they have to act older than they are, but they also know that it's also an environment filled with adults, and generally they haven't been acting in any way that's really inappropriate or anything that's to the point that you go, man, this place is filled with young kids.
Right. No, I get that. All right. So here's my next question. Now, from everything that I've gathered from what we've talked about with the community that you've started, and again, guys, that's Super Casual Football Sim League. Make sure to check them out. With everything that you've got going on, I take it that you have a pretty good understanding of how the NFL works.
That'd be a fair assessment.
Would I be correct with that?
I'm sorry, you cut out there again.
Jets fan, right?
Correct.
I did say you were a Jets fan, correct? Okay, so this is your time. Can you give me, what are the Jets going to do this
upcoming All right, so let's talk about my hopeful and I know this because I'm a Jets fan, they're not going to do this. I want to start off with that disclaimer. If they're smart, what they're going to do is they're going to trade for Deshaun Watson. They need a quarterback at the end of the day. That's kind of it. They have a young OL. They have the picks to make that move. Realistically, what they're going to do is they're going to look at the fourth best quarterback, say, that's our guy, and take them with the earliest pick possible.
Gotcha. All right, man. I'm hoping the Jets do something. Out of all the teams that are out east, I definitely have a soft spot for them because they always just kind of seem like little brother. They want them to take a step out and do something different.
No,
Do you
I
think
don't.
Darnold's going to be the guy going forward, or
Ooh,
that
that's the
this is
million
it?
dollar
Where is he
question.
going?
So I don't think. All right, so I say this as a lot of my friends are Bears fans. I think he's going to go to the Bears because they're going to think Mitch Trubisky's not the answer. That Darnold guy, though, we can fix him. But realistically, I expect him to sort of be a backup somewhere.
Gotcha. Brian, is there anything else that you would like to get out to your community, to people that don't know anything about Access?
I'd
What
say
would you
this:
like to tell the
if you're
people?
looking for a Madden alternative and you don't want to spend $60 on Madden if you're on the fence, Access is $30. Honestly, it's well worth the value that you're paying for it. It's a great game. It's a great engine. It has a bit of quirks. It has a bit of wonks, but name an engine that doesn't. It's just a really good thing and definitely worth checking out.
Brian, I appreciate your time, man. I definitely got you guys followed. I'll be tuned in,
Excellent.
watching what you guys got going on going forward. I cannot wait to see what Access does, and I'm looking
Yeah, they're
forward to
great
getting
people.
some of those guys on in the next few weeks. Great luck to what you guys got going on. Again, guys, that is Super Casual Football Sim League.
Sounds good.
Brian, we will see them next
Thanks,
week.
you too.
Have a good one, buddy.